Hi, ladies. So I see a lot of familiar faces out there, but there's probably a good amount of you that don't know us. So since we're best friends, we're going to introduce each other. So everyone, this is Asiimwe Teresa Najuma. She is a public health major and a biology minor at Wayne State University. She is a rodent lover. If you ask her about Nova and Willow, she will tell you all about them. She's a rollerblade enthusiast, and she's a Jimmy John sandwich engineer. Her words, not mine.
It's true. Come to Jimmy John's and I can hook you up. So, this is my best friend. Her name is Sololeya Tekwahimanat. She is pursuing her Bachelor of Arts in Psychology at the University of Dayton. She actually holds the world record for the world's fastest Netflix watcher. Don't look that up, just take my word for it. And she enjoys purchasing industrial-sized bags of Sour Patch watermelon candy. And she actually has a praise and worship mixtape, self-made on Spotify. That is not a joke. She really does. It goes hard, high key. So, Solo and I are best friends, and we have been for about 7 years. But there once was a time, believe it or not, where we were really just strangers. So, I'm just going to tell you guys about the time that we met. So, Solo and I both went to Father Gabriel Richard, go Irish. And so, when we were freshmen, when we were freshmen and we came to Richard, I personally didn't know anyone coming into Richard because I went to public school up until that point, right? So, we were like a few weeks into the school year, and like, I was low-key just feeling really lonely at Richard. Like, there is no one that I could really go to. Like, at lunch, I was just kind of sitting with, like, acquaintances. I just wasn't really, I wasn't really into it. And so, one day after school, I remember I was waiting for my carpool to come, and Sola was waiting for her mom to come pick her up. And we were sitting by the entrance of Richard, and I was, like, sitting on one side of the hall, and she was sitting on the other side of the hall. And I spotted her sitting, and I was like, wait, I recognize this girl. She's in my grade. Maybe I should talk to her. Like, maybe I could actually get some friends out here, you know what I mean? And so I was, like, looking at her, and I was, like, considering going up to her to go talk to her. And then I was like, I don't know, like, what do I even talk about? I mean, like, what if the conversation is awkward? And then I was like, no, some way, just, like, go up to her. So I went up to her, and we started a little conversation. We started talking about our hair, and next thing you know, we were just chatting away, and it was a pretty solid conversation, because my carpool came to pick me up, her mom picked her up, and as, like, weeks and months at Richard went by, Solo and I started hanging out more with each other. I started hanging out more with Solo's friends, and I was starting to make some friends, so it was pretty sweet. And we started hanging out with each other in groups, sitting together at lunch. We had a couple classes together. Then we started hanging out outside of school. Like, I would go to her house. They started inviting me to sleepovers, and it was just, like, such a great transition from freshman year, like, starting literally knowing no one to, by the time freshman year ended, like, I was honestly calling her my best friend, and I had a great group of friends, so, yeah.
Yeah, so somebody likes taking credit for how we met. I did a part in it, guys. I really did my part. But also, conversations about hair will take you a long way, so just do it. But as she said, friendships they evolve over time, Like, people change, situations change, and because of that, friendships can also change. So in high school, like Asiimwe said, we met our freshman year of high school. And it's not like we were instantly best friends. It was a slow, gradual process that she said. Like, we started hanging out in the same friend groups. We had similar classes, all of that. But Rashard did this amazing thing where it helped us discover ourselves, like, in a deeper way. Like, we had a deeper foundation of a friendship, which basically allowed us to have, like, conversations of substance rather than surface level conversations. So when the time came to go to college, I, for one, had a bunch of fears going into college. All these changes that were occurring. I was super overwhelmed, super stressed out. But the one thing that I always felt was a constant in my life was my friendship with Asiimwe. It was such a great feeling to have such a secure friendship when you're going to be 211 miles, which is the exact miles from Dayton to her house, away. It's so great to have a feeling of, like, someone's, like, close to you, like, at home. So when we were in high school, we relied on time. We spent a lot of time together, like she said. But when you're in college, you don't necessarily have that luxury of getting to spend in-person time all the time together. So we relied heavily on communication, and I mean heavily, meaning that I called Asiimwe about everything. If you ever see those memes where you're, like, calling your mom about you made chicken nuggets or something, that was me to Asiimwe. Like, I basically called her to tell her what should I eat for dinner, some funny interaction that I had with some stranger, to some of my, like, hardest moments and shortcomings in college. And without hesitation, Asiimwe made sure to answer that phone call, that text, Instagram DM. At one time, it was like a trivia crack DM. Like, we really did talk almost every every platform given to us, guys. But so it's almost hard to think of a time where we weren't best friends. You know, it's weird that even when we were writing this talk, it was like, when weren't we good friends? Like, that's weird. But yeah, there was a time where we weren't. But it just like shows that over time, like we said, friendships develop. And, you know, kind of like well, I don't know if we've touched on this just yet, but Simone and I are very different people. And, you know, people don't always want to see that, but like we are. And in high school, we joked about how we were the same person. We let people joke about how we were the same person. But if we actually really sat with each other, we are very different people. But that's what makes our friendship so great. You know, that we are such different people that can come together for like such a beautiful friendship. And I think that's just like a big takeaway on growth is that when you sit down and like we thought about, you know, who we are like to each other and ourselves, that we could be such different people and that that would be okay.
Yeah, so as Solo said, when she went off to Dayton and I was going to school in Detroit, we were 211 miles away. So college brought about a lot of distance between us. But the thing is, Solo and I, like, we just have this security in our friendship. And so going off to college, like, I was kind of worried about some friendships here and there, like, oh, am I going to get distance from this person and this person? But Solo was the one person who, like, legitimately, I was like, okay, at least I'll have Solo. So the distance that college created, like, we just knew that that would just mean that we had to put in a little more work for our friendship. And so honestly now, 7 years later after we met, like, I can really confidently say that our friendship is at the strongest that it's been. And so since Solo and I first became friends in high school, from freshmen to seniors in high school to freshmen in college and now seniors in college, that's a lot of change. That's a lot of growth, a lot of development emotionally, spiritually, and it's just a lot of transitioning in life that we've both had together. But despite all the changes that have happened in our friendship and that have happened in her and myself, there are a few certain values that have remained constant in our friendship that are the reason that that are the reason that we consider each other our best friends today. So the first one is communication. So in high school, Sol and I were basically joined at the hip. I mean, like, you really wouldn't find us separate. Like, at lunch, before school, after school, at each other's lockers. Like, we always had the luxury of being able to be around each other. And that was really a blessing. But the thing is, when college began, that was the first major transition in our friendship where we really quickly realized, like, we don't have that luxury anymore. And so when college started and we started getting, like, a few weeks into our freshman year of college, Sol and I were both at very different schools. We were meeting different people, and our experiences were very different, but we quickly came to realize that one thing that was similar in our experiences is that we were actually both feeling incredibly lonely in college. So Solo moved away to live in Ohio for college, and I was commuting to school, and both of those present, like, a lot of different challenges that Solo went through and a lot of challenges that I went through just making friends in college. And it was difficult because, like, I really felt like I was back at square one, Like, at the end of high school, I felt like I was at my peak. Like, I was, like, fortunate enough to go to school with my best friend, and, like, we had a great, solid friend group. And, like, the next thing you know, we were just, like, plucked out of that environment and plopped into college, and it's like, we got to do this all over again, you know what I mean? And so, yeah. So Solo and I realized that that transition was a lot harder than we anticipated. And so there are times where I struggled with being vulnerable about how lonely I felt because I would talk to my other friends from high school, and a lot of them were thriving. Like, they were making friends so quickly, like joining little clubs and stuff like that, and I was, like, happy for them, but, like, there's a big part of me that was silently, like, envious of it, you know what I mean? And I was like, why isn't that happening so easily for me? And so I really feel like my freshman year of college, like the devil was really trying to isolate me in that. And so there were times where I was too scared to, like, bring that up with any of my friends. But the thing is, I always had Solo by my side to bring that isolation and loneliness to her. And that's honestly, my friendship with Solo during that time really kept my head above water during that time. And the doors of communication in my friendship with Solo were always open. And so I could always go to Solo and tell her, like, I just went through a whole day of school and, like, I feel like I didn't have a conversation with anyone, you know what I mean? And I would bring these things to her, and she would just listen to me. And she would give me practical advice about, like, little ways that I can try and actually change that. And one thing that was most impactful is that like Solo was actually going through the same exact thing, you know? And so it was hard because we were both struggling and we couldn't just come together to fix that struggle for each other. We were on our own, but at the same time we still had each other. And so because I always felt like my friendship with Solo was a place where there was no fear or judgment to bring those stresses to her, it really allowed us to be there for each other, like in the truest sense. So the second value is commitment. So, like Solo touched on earlier, her and I are really committed to keeping one another involved in each other's lives. Like, you know, whether it's something crazy that happened in class or like a whack customer came in at Jimmy John's and ordered a really weird sandwich or something, or my guinea pigs were acting a mess or something, I would be like, bro, Solo, guess what just happened? Like, you know, or whether it was like the deeper things, you know what I mean? Like, again, like with the loneliness and sadness that I was facing, like, I never hesitated to bring that to Solo. And so the fact that like we always had that the fact that we always had that commitment with one another was something that even though we were hundreds of miles away from each other, I genuinely felt that our bond and connection was growing stronger because we were relying on one another throughout that. And so the third value is authenticity. So I really think that the ability to truly be yourself around someone, and to just, you know, and to be your full self, you know, whether it's goofy or wild or embarrassing or whatever it may be, like when you find someone who you realize, like, okay, like I'm kind of crazy, but this person isn't judging me, you know? Like I really felt quickly that Solo was that person for me. And not only could I be like the most authentic version of myself with Solo, but like she would really return that energy back to me. Like I never felt like I was too much with Solo. I never felt like I was not enough with Solo. Like anytime I'm with Solo, like I really just like I always feel so free to be, you know, the most authentic version of myself. And so I really think that that's such an important hallmark of a true friendship. Um, and honestly, when you find people like that, like beautiful things can happen when you keep them close to you.
Yeah, I completely agree. Like something about just being completely genuine with another person is so beautiful, and like we found it very early on in our like friendship. But as like we keep touching on like that we're different, but I think it's important that everybody knows. But like something that remains a constant again is that we support each other, we love each other, and you know just because of a human boundary like distance, we make sure that like that almost means nothing in a sense, you know. Like just because you're far from someone doesn't mean that you can't have that same closeness. And I'm gonna quote this. So I found that Saint Jerome once said that a friendship that can end was never true. You know, so again, true friendships don't end just because of distance or human boundaries. They change and they grow. And that's a big, big part is that they have to evolve over time. They change. So something that Asiimwe touched on was also commitment. And any type of friendship, relationship, anything is built on commitment. And Deacon Dave Lawrence, who was a deacon and amazing person in the FGR community who recently passed away, he used to say, "Show me your friends and I'll show you your future." And that was something that he said all the time, and I just let it pass me. But it is so, 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 so very true because what that reminds me of is that your friends have a large impact on who you are today. You know, they keep you happy, they keep you sane, they make sure that you remain true to who you are no matter what, especially the people that you meet in high school and even middle school and stuff. I still have friends from preschool. Like, they have kept me true to who I am to this day, and I'm 20 years old, which isn't really old, but yeah. But Asiimwe keeps me accountable in every way, shape, and form because she knows me. She knows who I can be, and she knows who I want to be, and she's going to be there to make sure that I follow through. Because sometimes I fall short, but she's going to make sure that I don't. You know, and that's because she tells me to journal when I need to. She constantly prays for me, and I don't know if one of you guys have had a conversation with this woman, but she has this like wild perspective on life that you would assume that she's like 45 and plus. Like she's lived some type of life, guys, and she knows all about it. But Asiimwe is just that type of person that you see Christ working with her so easily. Like it's almost like it's second nature to her. But and I wholeheartedly believe that like when I'm with Asiimwe, she like makes me a better person. You know, and that's because friendship is more like a covenant than a contract, meaning that we have such deep admiration for one another, and we seal that with an agreement that we are going to get each other to heaven. No matter what, that is our agreement. No matter how far we get, no matter how much time passes, I'm going to make sure she gets to heaven, and she's going to make sure I get there. And when you start to understand that friendship shouldn't be tentative nor transitory, and you put in the time and effort for them, then you'll truly be able to understand God's love for each of you and his covenants with each of you.
So with Solo, I really feel like each day that I'm friends with her is a day that I'm brought closer to Christ. I feel Christ's presence in Solo on a daily basis. Whenever we have a conversation, it just jumps out that Solo really has this ability to empathize with people and to really make you feel known and listened to and understood when you're talking with her. And being best friends with Solo has allowed me to feel heard and listened to in in a really beautiful way that I really never have before, and it's something that I'm so thankful for. And so this ability that she has manifested itself in so many different ways, and I found it to be especially impactful in my life throughout college, because college is a time period where you're exposed to so many new ideas, so many new types of people, so many different influences, and it can be incredibly easy to lose your roots and to be swept into habits and lifestyle changes that really don't reflect who you truly are. But during college, more than ever, it's so imperative that you have friends who know who you are and who know what you're capable of, because they won't let you fall short of that. And so Solo has been there to keep me grounded and to keep me accountable throughout all the ups and downs of that, which is honestly like really helped to make me the best person that I can be. Um, and so, yeah, throughout my college experience, because Solo has always been so involved in my life, like, she can call me out on the little things, you know what I mean? Things that I wouldn't even notice. And that's because, like, we've been able to stay committed. It's like all those values that I said earlier, they build on one another, you know? If you communicate and you stay committed, then you can really keep each other accountable. And so I'm just blessed that, throughout this transition, throughout college and everything like that, I've just never had to worry about being dragged down by my friendships, and especially with Solo, because I know that with her I'm always going to feel encouraged and uplifted and loved through this friendship.
So, kind of like as we pretty much wrap up this talk, there are just a couple like takeaways that we want you guys to take with you. So, if you have a journal or anything and you want to write it down, that's perfect. If not, you can just listen. But number one, true friendships do not end; they evolve. I will repeat that. True friendships do not end; they evolve. Number two, some of the values that we want you guys to take away are commitment, communication, and authenticity, which is really hard for me to say, I guess. But I'll say that again too. Commitment, communication, and authenticity. We should have come up with an acronym for that, but we didn't. Yeah. Okay. Number three, a friendship is like a covenant, not a contract. It is not tentative, nor is it transitory. Meaning that again, they're not for a certain amount of time. There aren't high school friendships, college friendships, work friendships, and we're not just taking things from each other. We're also giving to each other. We benefit each other. And number four, a truly Christ-centered friendship is marked by encouragement, uplifting, and love. Encouragement, uplifting, and love. And that's all we have for you guys.
Okay, so now it's time for a little bit of Q&A. Hope you guys are ready. So if anybody has any questions for these two lovely ladies with a beautiful Christ-centered friendship, now's your time. Go. No, I'm kidding. Yes.
So as I'm going into college, do you guys have any tips on how to make good Christ-centered friendships when you're just dropped in a new environment all of a sudden?
Okay. So, one thing about college. Oh, yes, that's right. Okay. So she asked if we have any tips about going into college, into a new environment, to make and create Christ-centered friendships. Okay, so when you go to college, and I know you're going to U of M, which is like a pretty diverse campus, lots of people of different backgrounds, ethnicities, religions, a lot of things. And so I go to Wayne State, which is a pretty diverse campus as well. And so a lot of my closest friends at Wayne State actually, a few of them are Catholic, but most of them aren't. But the thing is, with all of my friendships, I still do feel like they're rooted in goodness. It may not be necessarily Catholicism, but I do feel like they're rooted in true love. And that's because I think that it's so important to be with people who have the same morals and values as you, because the morals and values of Christianity extend to a lot of religions and just to our consciences in general. You know what I mean? Like it's pretty innate to know like good from bad. And so yeah, I've found that it's been most helpful for me to just surround myself with people that are of an upstanding moral character, because even if we don't share the same religion, I still feel like I'm open to talk about my religion to them, which I do, and they talk to me about theirs, you know, or their lack thereof. And we're just there to listen to each other, and we don't judge each other. And so if you feel like you're around people who are judging you because of your religion or because of your values, I promise you can find people who won't. You know what I mean? So, yeah.
So the question was like, how do we handle conflict and disagreement, just I guess between us and also other friendships would work too. So I can say at least with Asiimwe and I, like our personalities, like yeah, we're just not very dramatic, but it's not like we don't have disagreements. We've had plenty of disagreements, especially as we get older. But it's just I have a ton of respect for Asiimwe, and she has a ton of respect for me too. So it's important that when you're talking to people that have different interests than you, that you also respect their interests and their opinions, and you don't just like come at them with like hate or being mean, you know. So like when Asiimwe and I have ever had disagreements or anything, we acknowledge that we still love and care for the other person, but that we just have a little bit of a disagreement. And I think it's easier for us to get past those because at the end of the day, we still like love and support each other. Yeah, and communication. Was name one way that we've made each other a better person. Okay, so I come from a family that religion is kind of an interesting subject. It's not that my family's so religious, but we just have very differing opinions. And it's sometimes hard for me to talk about religion at home, even in college, because a lot of my friends aren't religious either. So Asiimwe made me a better person in the sense that she pushed me. She pushed me to go past what my family believes, what my friends want to like whisper in my ear and anything, and she brings me back home to what I know is true, which I don't have a lot of people in my life that are able to do that. You know, everyone wants to whisper their own little opinions and everything, but Asiimwe brings me to the facts, and she helps remind me that, again, like, if my faith is high, my happiness is high, and that's always been true.
Yeah, so one way that Solo has, like, really brought a change into my life is that, like, I've kind of realized throughout high school and college that I'm naturally actually, like, a pretty closed book. Like, it doesn't come that naturally to me to kind of, like, delve into hardships that I'm facing, and especially like insecurities and embarrassments that I have. And so the thing with Solo is that like if there's something that I'm holding back, like she can tell and she'll push me to share that, you know? And it always ends up being something that I am comfortable sharing with Solo. And but I just hold it in because of my own insecurities, you know? And every time Solo pushes me to dig a little deeper and to be more vulnerable, which like I don't consider myself a vulnerable person, but like with Solo, I'm the most vulnerable with her than I am with anyone else. And so because of that, like I've been able to work through insecurities and problems that I've had in my life because Solo's pushed me to talk about them. And like in retrospect, I always realize that like, wow, if I kept that thing bottled up, like it would be haunting me, you know?
You always have to do like rough patches in your friendship where you're like, oh, like we're not really friends anymore. We're not really.
I'll talk about this one time. Okay, so there. So yeah, honestly, Soul and I have never really had like huge blowouts or anything like that. But there was one time actually, and it happened kind of recently. It was this year, but. So Solo and I, like we touched on during the talk. I don't know if she can even remember right now, but okay, yeah. We touched on it during the talk, but we pretty much like talk on a daily basis, and I'm really not exaggerating about that. But there was one time where we got onto this disagreement, and it really what we were disagreeing about wasn't even like the substance of the issue, but we got into this disagreement, right? And then what happened is Solo and I we stopped talking to each other, and we didn't talk to each other for like 3 days. And okay, some of y'all might be like roasting me right now, like Asiimwe, calm down. But yeah, but the thing is like the reason that it was significant is because it was a real shift in like the attitude of our friendship. So if you guys have a friend that you talk to twice a week and then you go like 3 weeks without talking to them, like it was like that. So like, honestly, after, like, the first 24 hours that we didn't talk, I was like, oh my gosh, like, this is bad. Something's up, you know? But, like, during that time, like, I knew that we were kind of, like, in shaky ground, and so I was kind of, like, too, I don't know, I didn't, like, I was a little too, like, prideful to, like, be the first one to, like, jump in and start the conversation to be like, okay, so, like, we need to talk about this. But then, like, day 2 went by, day 3 went by, and I was, like, dying. I was like, oh my gosh. And, like, and every time, like, my phone would ring and I'd get, like, Snapchat, I'd be like, is it Solo? And it's like, no, it wasn't Solo. But, yeah. No. Yeah, okay, so then, eventually, we ended up, like, we got into, like, this little text conversation, and then I was like, Solo, can I call you? And then, like, we talked to each other on the phone. And then I was just, like, talking to Solo on the phone, and then I was like, oh my gosh, Solo, like, we haven't talked in, like, such a long time, and, like, I feel so overwhelmed and, like, so confused. And Solo's like, okay, so I've actually just been, like, pretty busy. Like, I really am not trying to, like, shut you out. So I was, like, low-key, like, overthinking about it, like, 100 times more than it actually was. But, like, the thing is, like, you know how I just said that I don't get vulnerable with people? So the problem is, I was feeling so stressed about not talking to Solo, and I wasn't telling anyone because Solo's my best friend. So, like, normally I'd be like, Solo, I'm not talking to, but it's like, wait, that's actually Solo. So, yeah, so then I was just telling Solo how, like, oh my gosh, I've been overthinking this time period where we're not talking, and, like, I was so overwhelmed and realized that I hadn't talked with anyone about how stressed I was that we weren't talking, that I literally just started, like, sobbing. I was, like, laying on my bed on the phone with Solo, and I just, like, couldn't even get out words. I was like, crying because I was, like, it was, like, everything that I was holding in for the past 3 days just, like, came out. But I'm so happy that, like, that phone call happened, because the thing is, whenever Solo and I go through disagreements, here's a pro tip. Talk on the phone. If you have an argument with someone, like, really talk on the phone about it. And so every time we have a disagreement and we talk on the phone about it, the conversation ends, and I'm like, oh my gosh, that was so simple, you know? Like, I should have done it on day 1, you know? But, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, just like add to that, like that was mainly on me for that. Remember that? Because I'm the type of person that I try not to be angry for more than 24 hours, and I legitimately set a timer. 24 hours pass, you give it up. But it was one of those things where, like, I was mad for 24 hours, and I kind of just, like, forgot that, like, I wasn't mad anymore. And so, yeah, I got busy and just did not talk to her, but it wasn't because I hated you. I talked to you. Yeah.
God's place in your life. You know what I'm saying? So can we talk a little bit about that, how to have the right kind of boundaries and expectations? So, because you're going to fail each other.
God gave you this person on this earth to walk with you, to walk along you, and to, like, make sure, because, like, no man was meant to be alone. So, like, God gave me Asiimwe so that I wouldn't have to go through hardships and everything alone. But I see, like, when I talk to Asiimwe, when I'm with Asiimwe, like, I see God in all of those interactions, and it's important that, like, you acknowledge that, like, when you're with the person. And a lot of the time, like, Asiimwe and I do, like, spiritual check-ins and make sure, like, so how are you doing spiritually? Because, like she said, she goes to Wayne, say, I go to Dayton, and, like, some of our friends aren't necessarily Christian or Catholic, so it's refreshing to talk to someone and just be completely unfiltered and just be like, God and I are going through this right now, or God and I are doing great. Like, that whole check-in is a really, really big part of, like, my week sometimes when we do it, because if I don't do that, then I won't get to do it until, I don't know, when I come home, like, stuff like that. Like, that's what keeps me, like, grounded in that.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, that's facts. But yeah, it really, I'm just echoing what Solo said, because it's the same for me, genuinely, but it is definitely important, and honestly, that, like, if I'm being candid, that might be something that I struggle with sometimes, like, because I do, like, have the blessing of like, having Solo that I can go to her, like, on a daily basis and whatnot. Like, it definitely is something that, you know, I know that I could recognize that, you know, sometimes I do need to to work harder to bring God first, you know. But the good thing is, like Solo said, since we do, like, communicate about our relationships with God, like, we push each other to bring God first, even if that isn't necessarily, like, our first reaction to things.